Hello, fellow Dragonblades. It's been a long time since we last talked. I believe it's been over 5 years now. I, I might be wrong on that, but I want to say it's been like 5 years. Um, During the hiatus for the channel, I've been I've been going to school, but I'm now in a position to where I feel like I can do at least regular weekly videos. Um, Now, as I stated in my post on the channel, um, if you didn't see it, that's fine. I've been working on a project that I'm pretty excited about. Um, Now, I only started this project about a month ago, and it's a long project, so it's not even remotely done. But what this project is I'm working on building my own sci-fi universe for use as a D&D-esque TTRPG. Um, right now I'm simply working on the setting, rather than gameplay mechanics, but I've gotten to the point where I can at least start designing ships and vehicles for at least one of the factions. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm trying out a new format, because phone footage ain't great. And I would like to start seeming more quote-unquote professional, or at least as professional as it gets with what I do. So, as you can see, I've drawn the ship we'll be looking at, and then I've photo scanned it and put it into a Google slide where I have all the information, well, I say all, most of the relevant information for it. So please let me know what you think of this new format in the comments, as I want to make videos y'all enjoy, you know. So if there's something you like, something you don't like, let me know. Now, without further ado, we will resume the channel with this, the Tethlon-class Patrol Boat. Now, the Tethlon is a smallish class of support vessel for the civilization, the Democratic Hurlon Empire, and its navy. For context, the DHE, as I call them, is a Democratic Republic, within my universe, and the people within are essentially my human analogs. They're slightly bigger than humans, but it's not necessary to get into the weeds there. Now, the DHE are, in the setting, relatively primitive in tech compared to some of the other factions that I have, but they are quite resourceful in figuring out means to be at least competitive. And you won't get a sense of that now, but you'll see as we go through and eventually start working on the other factions how exactly they differ. Now, the Tethlon is meant to be a multi-purpose support vessel for the DHE Navy, with capabilities that allow for large ship combat and fleet and ship defense roles. So let's take a look at size and propulsion. The Tethlon is 1,000 paces or 500 meters long and 400 paces or 200 meters in diameter. This is at the extremes. So a pace is a custom unit for my universe for distance, and it's equivalent to about half a meter. The ship itself has a mass of 10 billion pers, which is equivalent to 10 million metric tons. A per is basically equivalent to the kilogram. So DHE ships use direct fission nuclear reactors, both for power generation and for propulsion. Uh, but the propulsion reactors run a bit hotter just so they have better fuel economy, essentially. Um, but these propulsion ones allow them to use nuclear thermal rockets, NTRs. Now, the DHE has different classes of NTRs, and the classes are based off their diameter. Um, the Tethlon uses a pair of medium-large class NTR thrusters, which are about 20 meters in diameter, and you can find them here. These two large blocks on the back of the ship. Then there are also further augmented by 8 semi-small class NTR thrusters, which are 7 meters in diameter, and you can see them here. And then these have special construction where the tubes that connect the propellant from the reactor to the thrusters runs entirely through the rear structure of the craft with a valve in the middle that can turn to send propellant either to the rear-facing thrusters or to these front-facing reverse thrusters. Horrible wording, I know, but these allow the ship to slow down, stop, and reverse, but at a slower rate than, it can go forward because it doesn't have these massive engines on the front. But these smaller ones that are rear-facing, rear-facing, they help with forward propulsion. So all these thrusters combined allow the Tethlon to reach a maximum emergency burn acceleration of 2g or 20 meters per second squared. A g in my universe is defined slightly differently, with it correlating to exactly 10 meters a second squared, rather than our 9.81 yada yada yada. So this gives the class quite high acceleration even for a DHE large ship. This is on the small side of large ship, so as we'll see later, as a hint, the average DHE ship, at least for the Navy, is going to be several kilometers and closing on billions of metric tons, rather than, much smaller than that. Now, while these are all modeled on the ship, some of these smaller items are not. So, the Tethlon has 16 internal maneuver thrusters. Basically, these are, think of them like the maneuvering thrusters NASA uses. These are built into the structural hull and fixed in place and allow the ship to have pitch, yaw, and roll. These thrusters are primarily clustered around the joints of the different sections of the ship, with 4 thrusters per side. These can be further augmented by 4 disposable external maneuver thrusters. These are sets of box thrusters with thrust vectoring nozzles that can be attached to the outside of the ship for rapid course correction or use in other aspects such as docking procedures. If you've played Halo Reach or seen footage of Halo Reach, the units that are attached to the Pillar of Autumn when it is leaving Reach, it's similar to those. So, they're not primarily meant for thrust exo-atmosphere, it's just maneuvering and getting away from stuff before you can engage your primary engines. Now, some of you might be wondering, can this vessel travel faster than light? Yes, it can, but it's a bit weird. So how my FTL system works is ships do not travel in real space faster than light. You know, this is still a semi-hard sci-fi setting. It's not going to be, you know, Star Wars science fantasy, but it's also not going to be The Expanse, where you have to worry about every single physics detail. It's going to be more along the lines of something like Halo, where there's a physics backing, but there's a lot of leeway. But how FTL works is through the use of devices called sonic emitters, which you can see here, these little box structures. We'll get into them as they pertain to this vessel later, but how they work is they eject a mass, a stream of mass out of themselves, and this mass is sent out away from the ship before a sonic emitter engages and vibrates the mass at such a high frequency that at a set distance they form micro black holes in an arrangement that rips a hole in real space itself and allows access to not exactly another dimension, but a type of gravitational space or gravitational amplification space that I call subspace. Now, this does travel fast. When you go through subspace, you are traveling faster than light. Like, you can travel several light years within a couple days. But there's a weird temporal issue. So, when you're traveling in subspace, time for you stretches out quite long usually. For example, if a distance you travel in real space takes a week of subspace travel, in subspace that could be something like a month or several months of travel time. So each civilization has to come around with ways to reduce the effects of this temporal anomaly within subspace where you exist for a longer period of time than you actually are. But the exact specifics of that we don't have to worry about right now because it's not entirely relevant for the scope of this video. Now, I may bring it back in the future, but we'll see. Alright, next we'll talk about sensors. I don't have a dedicated page for this, so just bear with me here. We'll go back up to this screen. So, the DHE uses a wide variety of sensors, both in size and type, which gives them quite good situational awareness. Many arrays can be found dotted around the hull. However, the stock structure that you see right here, these house the primary sensor arrays and communication array. So this longer stock here houses the communication array, electromagnetic sensors, and a form of long-range radar, while the lower stock houses the primary optical sensor, which provides a wide field of view towards the front of the ship. Now, you may also notice this shape here. This is essentially an observation deck from which crew can gaze out to whatever they're looking at. Now, this is not where command is placed. Command is actually in a joint CIC Combat Information Center and command compartment within the amidship section. This doesn't really provide any space battle benefits, so it has these armored shutters that slide over the glass, it's technically not glass, of the observation deck to help ensure structural integrity of the bow structure. So now we'll move on to weapons. Now DHE weapons come in two varieties. The first are chemical artillery pieces. So it's pretty much what we use now, just quite advanced. So these fire chemical, nuclear, or solid shot projectiles at a target using chemical propulsion. They're relatively slow compared to weapons of other civilizations, but they can fire very rapidly and have the ability to detonate in close proximity to an enemy target rather than requiring a direct hit. The chemical and nuclear shells can also either be in normal omnidirectional explosive shells or in shaped charges. I've looked into it, and at least theoretically, nukes could be used for shaped charges, which I find quite fascinating. Um, anyways, the Tethlon houses three twin 1.5 pace 100 caliber turrets, or 0.75 meter 100 caliber turrets, in retractable mounts on the top side of the hull. So these allow so you can see them here and here. This set is mounted amidships, this set is mounted on the bow. Now, these are able to retract within the structural hull so that they are not always exposed to space. When in combat, they will generally be exposed unless maintenance needs to be done on them. Now, DHE chemical artillery comes in a multitude of sizes. This is on the small side, on the pretty small side. The standard DHE chemical artillery turret generally houses guns that are 2 to 3 paces in diameter, which is about 1 to 1.5 meters in diameter, with some extreme ones being 4 paces or 2 meters in diameter. Almost every gun fires at around 5 kilometers a second, although the exact figure can vary based on the specific guns and the propellant mass, but that is at least the standard. This gives them a relatively short effective range for what I call ship killer weapons, of only several hundred kilometers, simply due to travel time alone. They can technically be pushed out to thousands of kilometers, however, it's probably not a good idea. To get around the time issue, the DHE artillery has quite advanced autoloaders, which can have the guns have a sustained rate of fire of a shot every 6 to 10 seconds, depending on the exact guns. These 1.5 pace are closer to 4 to 5 seconds. And then they can also do burst firing, which is around every second. However, this comes at the cost of excessive power drain and barrel wear. Now, the former is pretty easy to recharge. It does take time, however, but the latter is a bit of a detriment. So this allows DHE guns to put up a large wall of shells to try to get something on or near target without having to worry about enemy maneuvers at least as much as if they're slower firing. So the second type of ship killer weapons are chemical missiles. I just punched my mic. I am sorry. So missiles come in a variety of sizes, but the primary distinction is in terms of launchers. So for primary offensive missiles, there are two varieties. The first are multi-directional launchers, which basically are launchers mounted in such a way that they're perpendicular to the central axis of the ship. So as you go from bow to stern, that straight line, these are perpendicular to that. This allows the missiles to fly directly away from the ship in any direction and easily turn to engage any target that isn't, by their viewpoint, behind the ship. This makes them great for multi-ship combat or off bow, or not off the bow combat. The second type are forward launch launchers. So these launched missiles kind of in the direction of the bow. So it has better velocity out the gate towards the front direction, which makes them less versatile around the rest of the ship, but means that bow on it is quite powerful. Now for the Tethlon, it comes with 16 medium multi-directional missile launchers, which are grouped in sets of 4. You can see them here. They're on the broadside between the two of the sonic emitters. These are, I don't want to say this, medium class missiles are about 1.5 to 2 meters in diameter, which is roughly about the same size as, some ICBMs such as the Minuteman III. They can carry a chemical or several megaton nuclear warhead towards the target at up to 30 kilometers a second, without taking into account the launching ship's velocity. This makes them decently powerful, quite fast missiles, and they launch in a large quantity. They also carry 8 large forward launch missile launchers. So these these launchers can be found in the joint between the midship section and the bow section, as you can see here. So large missiles are generally 3 to 4 meters in diameter and can carry either chemical warheads, which the chemical warheads are large enough to rival some nukes in the kiloton range, and nuclear warheads that are generally in the several hundreds of megatons, but there are some warheads that range into the gigaton range, although these are much less common. So these missiles are slower than their medium counterparts at up to 15 kilometers a second of velocity, not including the launch velocity of the ship in the direction. But they are quite powerful upon detonation, at least compared to the mediums. In general, missiles are much slower to reload than the chemical artillery, with the medium missiles taking about 200 seconds to reload and the large missiles taking around 600. This can differ based on exact missile status and what kind of warheads are used, but that's at least roughly around the right time. We'll now move on to the secondary weapons. So, we'll start with the gun armament. The first we find are 12 quadruple half-pace 200 caliber or 250 millimeter 200 caliber autocannons for medium range defense. These are essentially the equivalent of the Bofors 40 mil of World War II fame. While they can engage light vessels, their primary purpose is for longish range defense against missiles and enemy small craft. The second type are 24 octuple rotary autocannons for point defense. So these are essentially large versions of stuff like the R2D2 CWIS CRAM units used by the US military, but with larger overall bores and using barrel clusters of 8 barrels. This makes them quite good at missile and small craft interception. The Tethlon also has 2 non-ship killer types of missiles. So the first are 12 hex tuple missile intercept missile launchers. It's a launcher with 6 tubes. These are box launchers that fires missiles whose sole focus is to intercept enemy missiles or, you know, similar projectiles. It's essentially the equivalent of the sprint missile from the Cold War, where they burn fast and simply try to take out the warhead or the missile structure before they can go terminal and either detonate them in space or launch them off track. They do not need to be heavy explosive because it can really just be a kinetic interceptor with a rocket body. But they do have a small explosive charge just so that they can do more damage. The second type are 42 Setakuple small missile launchers. So these box launchers have 16 tubes for missiles, and these missiles are multi-purpose missiles around the size of some like Cold War and modern anti-air missiles. These can be used to attack enemy large craft at short range, um, and can defend against missiles and use against enemy small craft, although it's not optimal at the first two and is good at the latter. We then also have the sonic emitters as discussed earlier. These are set up in an octagonal pattern around uh, the foremost section of the midship section. So these can be used as weaponry because of simply how they work, but they're very close range. So you can either use them to generate black holes on an enemy vessel. However, you do have to worry about recharge rate as it takes an hour for these things to recharge. Or you can simply just project mass at a target and vibrate it at a lower frequency, which will mess up some stuff structurally within the enemy vessel, more than likely. Next, we'll talk about armor. Again, I don't have a page for this. But as you can see from this drawing, there are these slabs on the vessel. These are the armor plates. And these can be easily attached to the vessel when in dry dock for replacement and are designed to provide substantial resistance against most threats to the most critical portions of each section of the ship, which is why you can see these gaps in the armor. Lastly, we'll talk about small craft complement and escape pods. So the Tethlon houses a pair of magnetic rail launchers and receivers, which you can see down here. Now, these allow the Tethlon to store up to 2 small craft on the underslung mount and magnetically launch them from the ship with this unit rotated to be across the beam. In this direction, you can launch it forward, but you also risk launching something directly into the stern section of the ship. So these rails can be used to launch small craft as well as recover them. That way the Tethlon does not have to operate entirely alone and can have ships such as fighters, bombers, or transports. The class also carries 28 escape pods with 14 per side. Again, we'll go back to the drawing. we'll go to the big one for this. As you can see from the drawing, we've got some dots on the midship section here, which I have not yet covered. These are the escape pods. You have a row of 8 down here between the lower and middle midship armor plates, and then you've got a row of 6 between the middle and upper armor plates. However, these ones are blocked by a gangway port. Now, the gangway is essentially a bridge that you can extend from the side of the vessel and to connect to another ship or construct through a docking port or other gangway for easy transfer of supplies, fuel, electricity, and personnel, or it can be attached to the hull of another target of another ship, uh, to have a boarding action. Think of them like the bridge structure you see in the Series 1 Transformers show in the pilot, where the Decepticons connected to the Autobot ship and make a hole into the Autobot ship to board. That's essentially how that works. But it only works if you maintain speed, orientation, and distance to the enemy, or to the vessel. And that covers pretty much all the major aspects of the Teflon. If you guys would, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I know that's annoying to many people on the platform, and I get it. It's just I'm a small channel, so any support I get is fantastic. If you have any comments on the type of content you'd like to see on the Resume channel, please let me know. If I'd love to make these better and better, and also get content you guys want. If you have any ideas of new content you want me to see, or even just revamped versions of content from the older side of the channel, just let me know, and as long as it fits within what I want to do for the channel, I may do it. Speaking of the older videos, all of those will be staying up except for maybe the Minecraft video, just because the recording of that screwed up so royally. Yeah, if you have any thoughts, let me know. If I'm fine playing video games, but I need to know if that's something you guys want. But that won't be the primary purpose of the channel. The primary purpose of the channel is going to be these sketches. Also, I now have a Twitch channel. I will probably include it in the description of this video. If not, I'll try to include it in the comments. I've only done 3 streams on it, but if you guys want to see me stream video games, that's something I can do. Now that's all I can tell you for certain. This is something I'm debating, and I don't know if I'm gonna pull the trigger on or not. I'm thinking about making a Patreon, right? Now, I should preface this by saying, if I do, it is not going to make exclusive content that takes away from the channel. Everything that would be good for the channel will be posted on the channel. No YouTube membership or anything. But I'm debating it. It would have stuff like you get to see my writing process, maybe a Discord server, or Discord server access, um, forms to have custom ships or vehicles designed. I don't have many specifics yet, because again, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't want it to seem like I'm just asking for money. I can afford, at the scale I'm at, what I'm doing. If, and this is a big if, I get too large to the point where I need to start, putting work out to other people, such as editors or for software such as 3D programs, um, I might have to, but at present, it's just something that is optional at the very least. Um, but if I have any more information, I will let you all know. Um, but until then, peace out, fellow Dragon Blades, and God bless you.